One of the classic symbols of Christmas is a flower called the poinsettia. What a lot of people don't know is it's a really unusual flower in that, believe it or not, it doesn't have any petals. These are mostly all leaves. Now, the story of the poinsettia and its connection with Christmas goes back to an old folk tale told in Mexico. Down there, they don't call it the poinsettia. They call it the flower of the holy night, or the flower of the good night, or the flower of Christmas. And the story goes that there was a family that was very poor. They typically donated something to the church every year in honor of the Christ child. Well, one year the mother was asked to make a new blanket to wrap the Christ child in at the Christmas Eve service. She was known throughout the village for her fine weaving and her skill and everything, and so she had begun working on it. But she got very, very sick. Her daughter tried to help, but ended up making a terrible mess out of everything. The mother, being too sick to go to church, had to stay home, and the daughter, feeling very bad that they had nothing to bring, didn't know what else to do. Looking around, the only thing she saw were these very lush weeds growing near the house and growing along the road. And she said, "This is all I have to give, but it's very poor. It's not a very good present, and I'm afraid everyone will be insulted and God will be unhappy." Just then, an elderly woman appeared to her and said, "My dear, any gift given with love is a good gift." She looked down and thought about it and looked up and asked the woman if this is what she meant, but the woman was gone. On her way to the church, everybody kept asking her, "What are you going to give?" And they were talking about all the things that they were going to be presenting at the altar. And the little girl said nothing. Well, the time came for everyone to come up. They laid the child in the manger. They sang the hymns, they said the prayers, and one by one the villagers came up and left their simple gifts or their elaborate offerings at the foot of the altar or by the nativity set. Well, the little girl, she went last, hoping that everybody would be distracted and thinking of other things and wouldn't notice her. Well, they did notice. She left a handful of weeds in front of the manger. She knelt and she said her prayer. She asked the Christ child to please accept the humble gift because that was all she had to give. But she dearly wanted to give him something in honor of his birth. Just then she heard a gasp. She opened her eyes, she looks around, and the leaves of the plant are turning from green to a bright red. Everybody was amazed at that, and they were talking about it, and they gasped again when they went outside the church after the service was over, because all along the road, all around the village, that weed, the top leaves, had turned a bright, fiery red. And so they became associated with the Holy Night in Mexico ever since. In the 1820s, the U.S. ambassador to Mexico, Mr. Poinsettia, saw these flowers and fell in love with them. He had seedlings and clippings and cuttings sent back to the United States, and here he began cultivating them, and they became very popular, very closely associated with Christmas, and they preserved his name, the poinsettia.